What should have been a quiet, heartfelt moment between a mother and her daughter quickly unraveled into one of the most unsettling displays of control we've seen on Sister Wives in a long time. Robyn Brown and her 23-year-old daughter Aurora stood side by side in the kitchen, hands dusted with flour, baking cookies together. Robyn framed it as one of her special rituals, something she does with her kids whenever Kody is away. A soft, sentimental image on the surface. But it didn't take long for viewers to realize this wasn't really about bonding. It was about influence. It was about control, carefully wrapped in the language of concerned daughter Aurora had finally shared some truly exciting news after almost a year of dating. She and her boyfriend, Brody Utley, started to think long-term. This wasn't some teenage crush or casual fling that defined their relationship, celebrated milestones, and was clearly building something meaningful. For a young woman just starting to step into independence, this was huge. Any typical mother would have lit up. Any healthy parent would recognize such a thing as a sign of growth, confidence, and emotional maturity. But Robyn is not a typical mother, and her reaction made that clear as day in a painful sort of way. Instead of celebrating Aurora's happiness, Robyn immediately did an about-face. She spoke of wanting Aurora to experience life first, about needing to truly know herself before wife or mother. On paper, that advice sounds reasonable, even wise. But when you listen closely, the contradictions start screaming. If Robyn truly wanted Aurora to find herself, why is her 23-year-old daughter still living at home, under Robyn's roof, under Robyn's rules? Why hasn't she been encouraged to get her own place, make independent decisions, or build a life that exists outside of constant parental oversight? You can't preach independence while actively preventing it, and this is where the mask really started to slip. In the kitchen, Robyn smiled. She nodded. She played the role of the supportive mom, but in her talking head interviews, the tone shifted completely. There, she began laying the foundation to quietly undermine Aurora's relationship. She brought up that Brody was not from their culture. She mentioned how important it was to slow down. And through her words and, more importantly, her tone, it was clear she did not fully approve of this young man who had dared to step into her daughter's heart, and this wasn't some singular, aberrant moment either. According to sources close to the family, this pattern has been going on for years. Aurora has reportedly referred privately to her mother as Mother Gothel, a chilling reference to the tangled villain who keeps Rapunzel locked away from the world under the guise of love and protection. And honestly, the comparison fits almost too perfectly. Here's a young woman who has been sheltered her entire life, finally finding joy and connection, only to have her mother question whether she's even capable of love. Fans watching at home were shocked. Social media ignited in a matter of moments, with viewers calling the scene uncomfortable, controlling, and emotionally manipulative. Aurora is of legal age. She's reportedly graduated from college. She is more than capable of choosing who she dates. And yet, there was Robyn, casually stirring cookie dough while slowly chipping away at her daughter's confidence. One concern at a time, but then, the moment that actually stopped people cold in the middle of this conversation. Robyn dropped what she clearly believed was a profound piece of wisdom. She looked at her daughter and said, with total sincerity, that a man should never be a financial plan for a woman. The delivery was calm, earnest, almost sanctimonious. And the audacity of that statement was breathtaking. Because if there is one person in the history of this show who has absolutely treated a man like a financial strategy, it is Robyn Brown. To fully appreciate how hypocritical this moment was, we first have to go back in time all the way to becoming Sister Wives, the book Robyn co-authored with the Brown family. In her own words, Robyn confessed that when it came to remarriage, physical attraction didn't matter one bit. Age, appearance, weight, none of it mattered. What did matter was finding a man whose priority was to take care of his family. In other words, she wanted someone who could prove himself as strong, unselfish, and capable. Take away the flowery words, and it is as clear as the moon. She wanted a provider. She wanted security. She wanted a financial plan with a heartbeat. Before Robyn joined the Brown clan at age 30, she had worked very little. She'd had a few short-term jobs, receptionist, activities coordinator, and even, she said, every penny she made went to feed her kids, still never enough to stem her rising credit card debt. In the book, she plainly admitted she had to borrow gas money just to drive and visit the Browns while she was courting Kody. This was not a woman who stood on her own two independent legs. This was a woman seeking someone to save her. And Kody did, which makes Robyn's warning to Aurora not just ironic, but deeply revealing. When Robyn religiously married Kody, her era of being the independent woman quietly closed. As claimed by Robyn herself, she stopped working almost immediately after she settled down with the Brown family. In other words, after she joined the Brown family, every penny she spent had to come out of the common fund. This fund had been established through the hard labor of Mary, Janelle, and Christine. While they pour money in, Robyn withdraws. This has been true for more than 15 years. Let's put one thing firmly in mind. Robyn has not had a steady, decent job of any kind for over a dozen years. Meanwhile, Janelle worked a full-time job just to keep their family and household together. Christine dedicated herself to raising children and, after that, started and launched a series of prosperous entrepreneurial pursuits. She also operated a profitable bed and breakfast. The 11-day San Diego honeymoon was child's play in comparison to what Robyn got. The rest of the wives received 2-day weekend getaway road trips. She got a mansion worth a cool $890,000 in Flagstaff. It's a pity that Christine was worried for weeks about where in the family finances funds for life-saving surgery for a child might come from. These are hardly trivial facts. These are just two indicatives of a shocking trend. However, this is the very same woman who is currently standing in her kitchen, giving a monologue to her grown daughter about obtaining economic independence. She is preaching to her daughter about being self-sufficient while living in a mansion that has been made possible by the sacrifice of women who actually worked. This is a point that viewers did not miss. Robyn, however, was not yet done with this story. Just as the cookie dough was mixed, so what's the revised history at this point? Robyn decided to go even farther than logic and responsibility. She turned to religious ideology. Robyn was introduced to an interpretation of their ex-church norms in plural marriage, that it was permissible to think of anybody as a possible spouse. Anybody, this includes somebody who was already married with 3 wives and 13 kids. And then Robyn got to the point at which she wanted the audience to focus on. She talked of her car ride with Kody during their courtship, an experience that she says God's spirit swept and stole. With tears flowing and words escaping her, she felt God's own validation that Kody is her soulmate, that Kody is her future and her family. That is not simply a love story. That is strategy in action. That is narrative laundering occurring in real time. Consider the work that this one story does. Robyn takes herself completely out of the equation. It was not her decision to follow a married man. She didn't destabilize an already delicate family dynamic. No, instead, God specifically has told her to do this. She did not homewreck, she obeyed. Robyn's decision to move in with the Browns can then be seen as an act not of her choice, but of her ordination. An act in which she becomes more of an object than an actor, but the fans aren't buying it. They have a memory. They have watched the first few years. They have watched Robyn move into Kody's life with purpose. They have watched her cry about sisterhood while pulling Kody away from the other wives. They have watched her describe an 11-day honeymoon while watching the other wives have hurried road trip. This may be what you would label a revelation, but it sure looked a whole lot like strategy, and further, there is significance in the timing of this confession. This spiritual origin story is what Robyn is sharing with Aurora when she is presumably counseling her about her relationship with Brody. Is this actually what passes as advice? Is this not an opportune moment for her own image repair? In sharing this story, Robyn is able to accomplish these two things concurrently. She is once again making clear her relationship with Kody is God's will, while perhaps insinuating that Aurora is not ready. It's very important to understand that Aurora's relationship has to remain between Aurora and God, because Aurora and Brody don't. God comes first. always first. And by doing so, she has put God right into the middle of her daughter's romantic life because it has to meet a certain standard, a standard only Robyn has attained, apparently. If Aurora does not have a dramatic, tear-filled revelation about Brody, does that mean it is not meant to be? Oh, yes. See? This is the insidious genius of Robyn's manipulation. Robyn spiritualizes it. She camouflages interference in the guise of faith. She puts herself forward as the voice and conscience of her children's moral destiny while simultaneously claiming to be simply carrying out God's plans. The woman whose decisions have already unraveled a plural family now advises her daughter to get God's approval before expressing love. And this draws us full circle to the question of Aurora's independence or the lack thereof. Because here's the question fans keep asking. Why is a 23-year-old college-educated woman living at home? Why is Aurora Brown a full-grown adult in every respect of the word, sharing the same space, the same set of boundaries, the same emotional domain as her younger brothers? The answer is apparent the moment you step back and look at the surrounding environment Robyn has established for her kids. Aurora is not living at home because it is convenient or because she wants to. She seems to be living in a controlled environment where independence is subtly discouraged and autonomy is seen as something that could possibly get in the way rather than something to be achieved. Growth in this family is something that happens, but is controlled. Fans felt that reality hit them pretty hard in that infamous moment when Aurora and her sister, Brina, asked to go to church. Let that sink in. These are grown women who have the legal right to decide about matters of faith and matters of the heart and matters of everyday living. But she sat before Robyn to ask to go to church like she was a teenager asking to stay up late. Robyn's children, in contrast, are a world away from the others. Christine's kids have grown up. They've left home, gotten married, had children of their own, established careers, made mistakes, and grown, while Janelle's children have launched out into adulthood with confidence and purpose. In the midst of the most turbulent years of plural marriage, the original 13 have been allowed to develop, make mistakes, and find their own way. But Robyn's children are stuck in place, suspended in a state of extended adolescence. Protected from a world their mother knows to be full of peril they cannot withstand alone. As these episodes were airing, Twitter exploded in reaction. One fan nailed it when she said that Robyn is a controlling, manipulative parent. And although her daughters are legal adults and could simply leave if they wanted, they tiptoe around her because they are so afraid of upsetting her. Then there was another fan who observed that every time Brina manages to speak up for herself, she looks as though she is about to cry. She is tentative, reserved, fearful of saying something wrong. These are not the characteristics of young women who are ready for college and are soon to be on their own. These are people who have been trained in seeking approval for even a tiny personal idea. And, as reported by relatives, the sorts of things that are being captured on tape may very well represent only the tip of the iceberg. A cousin of the family, one who had previously been very close to Aurora, reported that after this family move, she had attempted to stay in contact with Aurora through online video communication. However, Robyn was always watching and intervening in every way possible to limit the extent to which the girls could speak to each other, in fact, speaking at all. And even when communication occurred, they all sounded as though they had been coached, as though they were afraid to speak their minds. Say what they were really thinking about in their personal lives. Behind closed doors, Aurora had been heard referring to her mother as Mother Gothel, the tangled character who holds Raw Puzzle captive in a magic tower, brainwashing her into thinking the outside world is just so very dangerous, so impossible to survive in. The resemblance is chilling. Aurora has been living in a gilded cage her entire life. Being the elder sister, she must be shouldering a lot of domestic responsibilities. She takes care of her brothers and sister, Solomon and Ariella. Aurora is shouldering her mother's emotional turmoil as well as the effects of her dysfunctional marriage. Aurora is also being told that she is not ready to make her own decisions, especially in matters of the heart. However, things have changed now. Someone has appeared in the scene who threatens this control. His name is Brody Utley. Everything that Robyn is not able to handle or control is represented by Brody. He is a 23-year-old ex-Army man from Flagstaff, Arizona, and he is as far removed as one could possibly be from the world that is so meticulously maintained by Robyn. He didn't grow up in the fundamentalist Mormon communities. He didn't hear about plural marriage as if it were normal. He met Aurora in a normal church, a church that is associated not with the Browns' fundamentalist beliefs, but is, in fact, a church belonging to mainstream Christianity. Just by virtue of that, he is very dangerous to Robyn. Brody represents independence in a way that is in direct conflict with what Aurora has been allowed to experience. He is simply a cowboy riding horses, listening to country western music, playing the guitar, going hunting and fishing, rock climbing through the mountains of Montana. His social media presence certainly gives the idea of a well-rounded, down-to-earth, and confident individual who is in touch with the history of his family's ranching. When fans began raising controversy over a photo of Aurora holding one of his guns, Brody defended it in a calm and decent manner, stating that it is his registered R-15 that he uses for hunting and recreation purposes. This is no man who is going to fall apart beneath the tears of Robyn Brown. This is no man who can understand, or even grasp, the twisted dynamics of emotions within the Brown family circles. Brody did not come from a cult family. He did not raise a life to submit to such influences. And that is what makes him so terrifying. Brody is something that Robyn has been working to avoid in her daughter's life for 15 years, a plan to get out. You can see the fear that's only thinly masked in support in Robyn's performance. He's not from our culture, she said repeatedly. Aurora has to find herself first, she said of the implications of commitment. Understand your mind and heart before becoming a wife or mom. Every word has been chosen with precision. Each one is pointed enough to sow doubt. Each one is worded in a way that's sharp enough to be believable and dull enough to be harmless. And yet, this is precisely what also makes Brody so dangerous for Robyn's control. Aurora didn't meet Brody through her mother's ranging. She didn't need an introduction, an escort, or the silent nod of approval from her sister. Robyn, after all those years of watching her, protecting her, and directing her, Aurora walked into Urban Hope Church in Flagstaff on her own. And it was there that she met someone for the first time who didn't view her as part of her mother. Aurora, for the first time in her adult years, made significant decisions of her own. And that means everything. The timeline of events tells a powerful story in itself, Brown concluded. Aurora was baptized at her new church in April. It wasn't long before she started dating Brody. By September, they were publicly celebrating their first-year anniversary with heartfelt Instagram posts. This relationship didn't develop under Robyn's careful scrutiny, but instead thrived out of her presence entirely. By the time it made an appearance on Sister Wives, it had already developed in such a way in Aurora, a man her mother hadn't known but mere weeks before, as reported from inside the reality show. Robyn's displeasure goes much further than what is shown to the cameras. Had Brody come from the fundamentalist Mormon environment, if he'd had money, status, or fit comfortably into the future that Robyn had envisioned for Aurora, things would have been very different. But from military veteran to cowboy to leading Aurora on picnics to hiking to hunting and to seeing the world Robyn has kept Aurora from, that was never part of the plan, and that's exactly what Robyn did next. This was during the conversation about the kitchen incident. And she said one of the most calculated statements that only barely registered. She told Aurora that her relationship as such was actually between you and God. And Brody, to a certain extent, think about that. To a certain extent, with that single remark, Robyn downgraded the role of Brody himself in his very own relationship and upped God to the final authority in herself as the interpreter of God's will. This is what I call manipulation in disguise. By involving God in Aurora's love life, what Robyn has essentially set up is a scenario where her daughter is conditionally urged to question her feelings unless they are approved by God himself. It's actually what she also practiced back in the day for herself. Have you forgotten that God spoke to her during that car ride with Kody? It seems that for all these years, Robyn has maintained that she receives direct communication from God. She now also demands that of Aurora, but here's where things take a pivotal, behind the scenes turn. Aurora pushed back, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. She corrected her mother's terminology with grace and eloquence. For me, it's me and God and Brody, and for Brody, it's him and God and me. It makes a difference. Aurora did not let her boyfriend be a footnote in his own relation. Aurora gave him an equal status in the spiritual calculation. That tiny detail has revealed much more to Aurora than she seems to have understood. She has been listening to the language of Robyn all of her life. She knows all of the tricks. She knows when she is being maneuvered towards an outcome through faith. And in that moment, she implicitly decided to draw up her own parameters in her relationship. Whether or not Robyn picked up on that reaction is hard to say, but she certainly did. Robyn's use of religious guilt is not anything new, says Darla. Robyn has been brought up in a fundamentalist environment and has been subjected to the religious authority of God being used to enforce obedience, of course. She has been witness to the way plural marriage situations played out where God's will was the rationale that was communicated in order to justify the sometimes painful and sometimes controversial path that the members of the family felt they needed to take. Now she is carrying out the same pattern with her own kids and covering her need to control with prayer and faith. The hypocrisy is immediately apparent to the fans. Robyn is so adamant that any kind of relationship should be one person and God, and yet she is being so forcefully pushed into Aurora's romantic life. She cannot stop pointing out that Brody is not from their culture and insisting that Aurora needs to find herself first. The mother who trusts in God's will does not need to interfere. Robyn is hovering around, doling out unwanted advice to fit a spiritual message. Her talking head statements made it clear that her true feelings were not in doubt. She thought Aurora was moving too quickly. She wondered if her daughter actually knew Brody well enough. She questioned if this is what God had planned for her daughter. These are simply seeds of doubt that were broadcast for Aurora's viewing pleasure. But that is where the underlying truth reveals itself. Robyn is not shielding Aurora from error. She is projecting. All the warnings, the pauses, the meticulously considered phrases can be connected back to Robyn's own past experiences with love. Decisions she made, consequences she lived, and experiences from which she apparently learned a painful lesson that she is determined to convey through Aurora. Aurora is not doing anything wrong. She is suffering for the transgressions that never were hers when Robyn was writing Becoming Sister Wives. She surprised herself by being so candid about a relationship that did not immediately provide support or fanatical enthusiasm, that of a relationship with her own mother. Alice, of all the individuals that Robyn had in her world, it was Alice who had the most difficulty with Robyn marrying Kody, and it was not based on jealousy or possessiveness. No, it was based on fear. Alice was afraid that Robyn was jeopardizing the safety of her children by bringing them into a polygamous family and raising the reality show lifestyle. She was frightened because Robyn's first marriage had already been dysfunctional. She believed that Robyn was playing a game so that she could do the same things again. Sound familiar? But at the time, Robyn waved her mother's concerns away. She just doesn't understand, she told her mother. She described the Brown family as warm, loving, spiritually centered, a loving unit with the healthiest family dynamics she had ever observed. "I'm giving my children the best father in the world," she said. Fast forward 15 years, and that dream family has imploded. 3 of Kody's wives have left. The bulk of his children are cut off from him. The children of his 4th wife, Robyn, have actually admitted on national TV that they have felt unwelcome in this family. The dream that Robyn marketed herself on, and then marketed this dream to her own mother, has become a nightmare on national TV. And now, here is Robyn, who is standing in her kitchen, doing to Aurora exactly what Alice did to her. But the crucial distinction Robyn refuses to recognize is this: none of the warning signs Robyn brought with her into marriage are present in Aurora's circumstances. Robyn was 23 with children. Robyn was dragging her kids into this mixed family situation. Robyn was entering into this plural marriage with 3 married women in the household. Robyn was making agreements which would mean all of the most fundamental aspects of her personal life would be known to millions of people. Robyn was dating someone who was not only of appropriate age, but had met him in church, and this was Robyn. But Robyn can't distinguish between the two, blinded by her own guilt. Robyn spoke openly in her book about her desire for fame to meet Oprah, write a bestseller, and change the world. She confessed that being on television changed her dramatically in her introduction to the Brown family. She further confessed that she was branded a homewrecker right from the start by her fans. Robyn also understands that the criticism she receives is not entirely unwarranted because she does know that she upset, something that was well established before she came on the scene. What the woman doesn't want to handle is what she turns away from, advice she has for Roar to find herself before she finds someone to be her wife or mother is particularly telling. Robyn has never done that. She has simply marched from husband to husband, from financial turmoil to financial dependence in which she has nothing that belongs to her at all. She has never started an ongoing life or identity that is separate from that of a man. All of the things she cautions Rora to avoid are things that she has done herself. Alice was well justified in her concerns. Robyn's rival in the Browns' lives unleashed 15 years of chaos, failures, broken relationships, and a family in ruins. However, Robyn's inability to acknowledge her mother's foresight in understanding what Robyn had failed to see means Robyn had to transform into the mother, Alice, who projects the same fears on her daughter, whose life is utterly different, and it's not as if Robyn's hypocrisy ends there when it comes to love. Far from it when you look at the overall finances, because this is where the record becomes simply irrefutable. Shortly after Robyn became part of the Brown family in the year 2010, it was evident that the new family member did not come into the union on the basis of equality. Rather, the new family member came in with financial burdens to the family. According to reports, the new family member, Robyn, brought along credit card debts of about $32,000, which the family had to take to enable them to qualify for the purchase of their Las Vegas homes. Before the new family member, Robyn, contributed a single dime to the family kitty, the individual had to make a massive withdrawal. The rest of the wives had worked hard over the years to lay this foundation. Janelle was a full-time employee for several decades as the primary breadwinner. Christine chose not to pursue a profession so as to take care of the children. This made her in charge of the house as a whole since the polygamous family was dependent on her. Mary added her earnings and later started a successful business in a bed and breakfast. These women worked. These women earned. They funded the community pot through which the community was sustained. Robyn, on the other hand, withdrew. The withdrawal was comfortable when she moved in with a family that already had 3 experienced mothers and lots of big kids to help out around the household. Robyn had to hire a nanny, not a sister wife, not family, a paid employee whose wages could be extracted from their shared bank account. Christine had birthed over a dozen children without hiring assistants, but Robyn required professional help with just 3 of hers. The other wives took notice, and the jealousy started festering right away. Next was the issue of the honeymoon gap. While Mary, Janelle, and Christine each received relatively low-key road trip honeymoon adventures with Kody after they married, Robyn would soon find herself on a path towards a whole different kind of honeymoon. Those first wives, of course, got short, practical honeymoons, road trips that were within budget. But Robyn got a vacation of 11 days in San Diego, almost 2 whole weeks of unadulterated woman and wife time, while her sisters stayed behind, putting in work, raising kids, keeping things together. Her kids didn't go with their sister wives, even during this special occasion. They were off at her mother's, in keeping with her theme of being separate, superior, and removed from the very family she decided to join. Of course, and then there was the Flagstaff house, the point where the financial inequality couldn't be denied. An $890,000 house, completely unlike what the rest of them had been experiencing. Janelle, for instance, living in an RV on Coyote Pass, foregoing luxury in order for her children's future. While Christine struggled to cobble enough cash for Isabel's surgery, Robyn bought a mansion. Later, Kody claimed he forced her into buying it, but honestly, has Robyn ever lived on the quiet side? Janelle finally had words with her when she caught her wearing $400 flip-flops and Tory Burch sandals while the rest of them struggled to make ends meet. That's not jealousy, honey, that's resentment built up over time due to inequality. Then came my sister wife's closet-proof Robyn was a businesswoman, an equal partner. She declared herself CEO and creative director, touting jewelry design as her entrepreneurial feat. The truth, however, was a totally different story. The company never made a profit. The website collected cyber dust for years. And when customers reported being cheated for goods that never arrived, Robyn simply mocked their complaint, attributing their fault to their use of a shopping cart that Robyn herself never saw fit to turn off. That is not entrepreneurship. That is playing at being something the entrepreneur. That is when actually playing with other people's money for the first 15 years of their marriage. Robyn had been the financial dependent, and this had been borne by her sister wives. The shared account had been used by Robyn as if it was money solely for her personal expenses. And now, she goes on to lecture her daughter that a man should not, under any circumstance, be part of a financial plan. It's hard to even catch one's breath at the level of this blatant hypocrisy. But Robyn's control doesn't end there. She has also the extent of that baking with cookies episode is not an isolated incident. The treatment of children has been observed throughout various seasons with validation from family sources. This is a woman who has goaded her children away from their extended family, restricted their communication, and taught a household dynamic that views independence as a form of betrayal. Think back to the Christmas group message. The Brown children were attempting to stay connected to each other through the family group message, which was the simplest, most benign way of keeping the family connected. Then, of course, Robyn had to interfere and take her children out of the message. She effectively shut them off from brothers and sisters. The message was loud and clear, the outside world, and yes, the family would all pass through Robyn. There was a cousin who grew up with Aurora. This cousin knew much more disturbing information about the girls before the whole family moved. This cousin tried to keep up the friendship that the two girls shared as kids by FaceTiming them. However, Robyn was always meddling, not letting the girls say a thing. When the girls are finally able to FaceTime each other, the kids seem rehearsed, like they don't have a say about what's going on in their lives. Even the biological dad, Preston, had to join by sneaking onto the call since Robyn was so strict about who could join, and then came the detail that haunted viewers. Aurora had a nickname for her mother, Mother Gothel, the villain from Tangled. The parallels weren't coincidental. Aurora liked to think of herself as Rapunzel, living in seclusion with a mother who believed the world was too dangerous. She was smothered. She was controlled. She was not living her own life. It was not teenage angst. It was recognizing the box she had been placed in, and the evidence just keeps piling up. Evidence we want to visit. Churches from other religious backgrounds. Aurora and Brina asked Robyn hesitantly, like children asking to do something they know they shouldn't. These are grown women, Aurora said later in an argument with her sister. They can go wherever they want. No church service is off limits to them if they want to attend. Brina was expected to be in church. We weren't. Aurora said Dot has built a family in which her needs are prioritized and met first. Her children are there to legitimize her suffering and affirm her victimization and are to be loyal to her truth. They have learned how she uses her crying to silence dissent. They've learned how she puts all conflicts in context to position herself as the wrong party in each situation. They understand, on some instinctive level, that to go against Robyn is to invite consequences that are to be avoided. But now, this chokehold has reached Aurora's love life. All these observations about Brody not being a part of their culture. All these hints of the need for Aurora to find herself first. All these nudge-nudge reminders of the fact that it is ultimately a relationship between Aurora and God. Each one of them is another fiber in the web Robyn is weaving for her daughter. Robyn realizes that she cannot directly prohibit Aurora from dating. Hence the promotion of doubts and fears, the positioning of herself as the final spiritual guide. Control may not always appear in the form of yelling or ultimatums. Other times it feels like cookies concern, and the soft voice in your head telling you not to trust your own heart, but it seems that Aurora may finally have found an escape, and that is something that Robyn just can't control. No matter how many cookies she has baked or spiritual guidance she has dispensed, something profoundly special is happening to Aurora Brown for the first time in her highly controlled existence. She is making her own choices and not someone else's, not her mother's, not the family story, and not the faith tradition she has been raised in. Look at the pattern. Aurora didn't wait for permission. She found a church of her own. She decided on baptism in her own way. She met a man of her choice alone, and she is building a relationship that operates beyond the boundaries of Robyn's control. When you break down the timeline, you see a girl who is not rebelling, but reclaiming herself. In April, Aurora was baptized at the Urban Hope Church in Flagstaff, a traditional evangelical church with no connection to the family's fundamentalist upbringing. Far from a symbolic act, this represented a choice to leave behind the spiritual environment that Robyn has provided throughout her life. Aurora even asked Kody to be there, and it seemed to genuinely surprise him. It definitely has nothing to do with pleasing her parents, as she continues to forge ahead on her own path. And she also expressed something very meaningful. She told her mother flat out that plural marriage is not something she wants to do either. That option is closed. Next came Brody, a cowboy from New Mexico, an Army vet, a man who lives life in the real, natural world in a way that Robyn doesn't understand or can't control. Brody rides horseback, plays the guitar, hunts, and publicly declares his affection for Aurora in every possible way. They are now celebrating their first-year anniversary in September. Brody has posted pictures on Facebook stating Aurora as his darling and thanks God for her in his life. And the difference is stark. The warmth in these pictures contrasts starkly with the tense, guarded, almost forced version of Aurora that has been on display on Sister Wives for so many years. Fans quickly picked up on this. Aurora does look happier with Brody. Her smile is more natural. The nervous energy that used to appear as if etched into her flesh in her family scenes is now gone. In fact, a fan nailed exactly what is going on, indicating that Aurora now radiates that in fact, she simply didn't before. This occurs when love is not tied to terms, guilt, or game playing. However, Robyn is not going away quietly. Each interview, each talking head, each conversation in the kitchen holds the same subtle subversion. Robyn wonders if Aurora actually knows Brody. She emphasizes the need to take things slow. She falls back again and again on the mantra that Aurora needs to find herself first. The message of the campaign has already begun, carefully enfolded in maternal solicitude, spoken in hushed tones and laced with concern. The critical question is whether Aurora has become sufficiently resilient to resist this. She has already asserted herself by correcting her mother's terminology in the cookie incident and by making it clear that Brody is an equal contributor. She also continues her relationship with Brody in spite of her discomfort in front of her sister. She has established a community of believers and an appropriate relationship that does not involve her mother's involvement or acceptance. Brody could quite possibly be the escape that Aurora needs from the tower that Mother Gothel constructed. He symbolizes a world where she matters as a person, not as an object to be controlled, manipulated, or shaped to calm another's fears. Whether or not Robyn is successful in instilling enough doubts to avert this union, we'll have to wait and see. So, what do you think? Will Aurora finally be free, or will Robyn's cunning prevail once again? Leave your thoughts in the comments section, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next chapter of this story is already unfolding. And you won't want to miss what comes next, reads the continuation of the series announcement from Amazon described by THR.